Good morning. Welcome to our story this morning. This morning, our story is called Samuel Hears a Voice. Do you ever wake up during the night? Perhaps you have a drink of water, go back to sleep. Or maybe you go and wake up someone else, like a brother or a sister or mum or dad. In our story today, a little boy called Samuel keeps waking up. Samuel lives in the temple where Eli is the priest. His job is to help Eli, not to keep waking him up. So before we hear our story about Samuel, let's do our rap. Let's open the book. Let's take a look. Let's listen and see how good God can be. Oh, let's take a look. Let's open the book. Let's open the book. Let's take a look. Let's listen and see how good God can be. Oh, let's take a look. Let's open the book. Ready? Our story today is called Samuel Hears a Voice. Now that God's people were living in their own land, there were so many things he wanted to tell them. How to be happy, how to care for each other, how to protect themselves against their enemies. So God decided to choose someone to speak for him, someone he could talk to, who would then go and talk to the people, someone called a prophet. God looked and looked all over the land of Israel, eager to pick just the right person. And finally he found him in a village called Shiloh. It's a bit like Sheepy Magna, but it's called Shiloh. And this little boy was in the house of Eli the priest, and he was called Samuel. Samuel, God called one night. Samuel, I want to talk with you. Samuel sat up and rubbed his sleepy eyes. He'd never heard God's voice before, and he thought old Eli was calling him. Samuel stumbled into Eli's room to see what he wanted. But Eli just shooed him back to bed. Samuel, God called again. Samuel, listen. Samuel was confused this time and just a little scared, so he crept back into Eli's room. I told you, boy, yawned the priest. I didn't call you. Now go back to bed. Samuel didn't know what to think as he went back to his room and went back under his covers. But when God called again, Samuel, Samuel, for the third time, he knew what to do. He dashed back to Eli as fast as he could. Samuel, sighed Eli, if either of us are going to get any sleep tonight, we need to find out who's calling you. I have an idea who it might be. So the next time you hear that voice, I don't want you to come running into my room. Instead, I want you to say, Speak, Lord, and I will listen. Samuel's eyes opened wide. Do you mean it's God calling me? Do as I tell you, said Eli, and we'll find out. So Samuel went back to bed. God called his name again. This time Samuel stayed where he was and listened to God. And his eyes opened wide with wonder. And from that moment, when Samuel was just a little boy, until Samuel was himself an old man, God talked to Samuel, giving him messages to pass on to the people. And just like that very first time, God's messages never failed to leave him wide-eyed with wonder. Samuel was called a prophet. Can anyone remember what a prophet was? The story explained it like this: someone who God chose to speak for him, someone he could talk to, who would then go and talk to the people and pass on God's messages. There are many, many prophets in the Bible, and Samuel was one of the very first prophets. So close your eyes for a moment and imagine what God's voice might have sounded like to Samuel. Do you think it was very loud and booming, or soft and gentle? Now I'm going to say a prayer, and if you'd like to join in with that prayer, you can say Amen at the end. Dear God, thank you for talking to Samuel, even though he was just a little boy. Help us to remember that you talk to everybody, children and grown-ups. Please help us to listen to you today. Amen. What a lovely story. That's one of my favourite stories from the Old Testament part of the Bible, because God speaks through a child, just a little boy. And it does remind us that God is there for everybody. So I hope you enjoyed the story too, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Bye.